The thing about rational functions is that their equations come in many forms, and the shapes of their graphs come in a huge variety. They're all a little bit different. So to start, we're going to look at the most basic rational function. A rational function will always have a variable in the denominator. So this is as basic as it can get. Anytime we start to investigate a new parent function, we plug in some values for x and see what happens. Well, first of all, recall that this particular function has an excluded value of x. That creates what we call a vertical asymptote. It's a vertical line that represents the excluded value of the function, and your graph will never cross that vertical line. So after that, we then start to investigate by plugging in some values. What if I plugged in a 1 for x? Very easy. I get 1. So I'm going to graph that point, 1, 1. What if I plug in a 2? I don't really need my calculator, I realize that. It's just for visual effect. If I plug in a 2, I get a value of 1/2. If I plug in 5, I get a value of 1/5. So what I want to think to myself, is there anything that I could plug in that would create a negative? There isn't anything that's positive on the right side of this asymptote that would give us a negative value. Even if I tried to plug in a 1,000, 1 divided by 1,000 would just be an eensy tiny number getting closer and closer to 0, but never crossing the 0. That's what creates a horizontal asymptote. So my graph is going to have a couple of branches. Again, the vertical asymptote came from excluded values. The horizontal asymptote came from plugging in points. And I'm going to have 2 branches that follow. Whoops, I'm trying to draw here. That connect the points we created. I'm drawing with my finger, that's a little bit messy. Create the branch in the top right corner. If we were to investigate some points on the left side of the vertical asymptote, like -1, what if I plug in a -1 for x? 1 divided by -1 is -1. 1 divided by -2 is -1/2. 1 divided by -5, -1/5. Then the same thing is going to happen here. And we will try to use my messy finger on the computer. And that's actually looks a little bit better. It just didn't get into the right position. It'll be right up here, going through those points, never crossing either asymptote. Now we can look at our graph and identify other characteristics. Zeros are x-intercepts, and our graph will not have any x-intercepts. Our graph will not have a y-intercept. The domain of our graph would be all x values excluding 0. We would write that as -infinity to 0, and 0 to infinity, not including 0, and the range would look the same. And like I said, the rest of our rational functions are going to be very different than parent function. This is a basic kind. We will have lots to study because not all rational functions have just these 2 asymptotes. Some asymptotes are slanted instead of horizontal. Sometimes a graph will cross the horizontal axis. Weird, I know. Some of our graphs will have holes in them. There's lots for us to learn this upcoming week, so keep up and ask questions.